Greetings and peace. I would like to start this with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful, and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Peace be with you and yours. Today's presentation, I would like to do an in-depth book review and analysis of the teachings of P.D. Ouspensky, who was a student of Gurdjieff, and his book In Search of the Miraculous. I hope you benefit from this, and I represent myself only. A disclaimer before beginning that this work is only for the purpose of entertainment, educational purposes, and it is for the purpose of taking the esoteric teachings and what it inspires us spiritually, psychologically, and in terms of our thoughts and understanding the cosmos and the world around us, rather than serving as an absolute directive for your personal life or telling you what to do or what to join. So just take the teachings from this and apply them to your life. And of course, this is for entertainment and education purposes only. For those that don't know Ouspensky and Gurdjieff, welcome. Today we are exploring the profound and often unsettling philosophy found within In Search of the Miraculous, a text that chronicles the journey of P.D. Ouspensky. Ouspensky was a renowned Russian philosopher and journalist who, returning from India in 1914, was desperately seeking a teaching that could solve the ultimate problems of man and the universe. He recognized that humanity was trapped in a labyrinth of contradictions, and he was convinced that the escape route lay in an entirely new or forgotten road. His search culminated in St. Petersburg in 1915, when he met Georges Gurdjieff, referred to simply as G throughout the text. Gurdjieff was a mysterious Caucasian Greek teacher who had traveled extensively through the East, gathering fragments of an unknown ancient teaching. Together, they formed a dynamic that would bring these deeply hidden esoteric concepts into the modern Western world, fundamentally challenging our understanding of human consciousness. For Ouspensky, the concept of the quote-unquote miraculous was not a fairy tale. It was a necessary penetration into an unknown reality that sits just beyond the thin film of our false everyday existence. Upon departing for India, he dreamed of making contact with ancient schools of wisdom on another plane, hoping to find hidden truth that Europe had long forgotten. However, his travels taught him that true esoteric schools demand much more than a romanticized search. They require absolute dedication on the earthly plane. When Ouspensky returned to Russia, the outbreak of the First World War shattered any lingering illusions he had about the stability of modern life. The wild absurdity of the war acted as a massive memento mori, proving to him that living a mechanical life led nowhere, and that finding a genuine rational school of awakening was more urgent than ever. He realized he needed a path that allowed him to see exactly where he was going without relying on blind faith or emotional trance states. Ouspensky's initial meeting with Gurdjieff defied all his spiritual expectations. Rather than encountering an enlightened sage in a remote temple, Ouspensky found Gurdjieff in a noisy Moscow cafe where small dealers and commission agents met. Gurdjieff appeared poorly disguised in a black overcoat and a bowler hat, speaking incorrect Russian with a strong Caucasian accent, yet carrying himself with a feline grace and absolute, piercing assurance. In this very first conversation, Gurdjieff proved his mastery by completely reframing Ouspensky's ideas about esoteric practices. When Ouspensky asked about yogic schools altering the body's chemistry, Gurdjieff explained that while different schools might use the exact same methods, their understanding and the resulting consequences for the human machine could be entirely different. This encounter immediately convinced Ouspensky that he had found a man possessing a remarkably precise and systematic knowledge of the unknown. One of the most shocking and uncompromising premises of Gurdjieff's teachings is his mathematical assertion that man is a machine. According to Gurdjieff, all people you see, know, and will ever meet are born as machines and die as machines, operating solely under the power of external influences and accidental impressions. He completely dismisses our romantic notions of individuality, stating that there is a fundamentally no difference between a highly educated intellectual and a savage, as both are equally automated by their environments. To truly study human nature, Gurdjieff insisted that we must first abandon the comforting illusions of modern psychology. He argued that psychology only applies to actual human beings, but for machines, the only appropriate science is mechanics. A machine cannot know itself, and it is entirely irresponsible for its actions. Only when a person begins to deeply understand their own mechanical nature do they take the very first step towards ceasing to be a machine. Flowing directly from the concept of human mechanicalness is the deeply offensive but vital truth that nobody actually quote-unquote does anything. Gurdjieff emphasized that all our thoughts, words, actions, convictions, and feelings do not originate from within us. Instead, they simply happen, just as rain falls due to atmospheric changes or snow melts under the sun. Human actions are the inevitable blind results of external cosmic and worldly pressures. To accept this requires shedding thousands of deeply ingrained illusions about human creativity and our ability to consciously organize our lives. Gurdjieff pointed out that even massive global events like wars and revolutions simply happen, driven by planetary influences and mechanical reactions rather than any actual human agency or governmental control. He taught that everything is connected and interdependent, meaning that events unfold in the absolute only way they possibly can. Because man is completely mechanical, Gurdjieff drew a sharp, defining line between merely acquiring knowledge and genuinely changing one's state of being. He noted that seekers always mistakenly ask what they must do, failing to realize that in order to truly do anything, a person must first learn how to be. Without a radical transformation of our internal being, any new knowledge we acquire will just be built on false foundations, inevitably making our situation worse than before. This transformation requires learning an entirely new language, because in our ordinary language it is quite literally impossible for people to understand one another. Furthermore, a person must learn how to speak the truth, a task Gurdjieff described as the most difficult thing in the world. Ordinary people rarely tell a deliberate lie. Instead, they lie to themselves and others constantly because they simply do not know what the truth is, living in a perpetual state of inner deceit. We naturally assume that we possess a singular unified identity, but Gurdjieff's system shatters this belief by revealing the absence of a permanent I. Instead of a cohesive self, the human machine is composed of a vast multiplicity of small, shifting, and contradictory I's. The I that makes a solemn promise today is completely different from the I that is expected to keep that promise tomorrow, explaining why human beings are so incredibly unreliable. Because of this constant internal fluctuation, an ordinary person cannot be held to any real obligations or keep serious esoteric secrets. One part of a person might swear to keep a secret, while another part will easily let it slip to a friend over a bottle of wine. Recognizing this total absence of inner unity, realizing that it speaks, it thinks, and it observes, rather than a unified self doing these things, is the painful but essential first stage of genuine self-study. In the realm of human relationships, Gurdjieff identified a pervasive mechanical habit he termed considering, which acts as a massive drain on our energy and a primary source of inner slavery. Internal considering occurs when we are obsessed with what others think of us, feeling that they do not value us enough or believing we are constantly suffering injustices. This attitude creates a deep unconscious dependence on external validation, stripping away any potential for inner freedom. On the flip side, Gurdjieff advocated for what he called external considering, which requires consciously adapting to the mechanical nature of others without losing one's own internal center. He noted that if a person could stop mechanically considering others internally, their entire reality would shift, and the people around them would be forced to react differently. Liberation from the machine begins with recognizing these automated psychological reflexes and fighting violently against them. Gurdjieff radically redefined the concept of art, splitting it into two distinct categories: subjective and objective. Subjective art, which encompasses nearly all modern creation, is based entirely on mechanical reproduction, individual fantasy, and accidental associations. Because it is subjective, a single painting or piece of music might evoke joy in one person and sadness in another, meaning the artist has absolutely no real control over the psychological impact of their work. Objective art, however, operates within the exactness of mathematics. In objective art, there is nothing accidental. It is designed with absolute precision to produce exactly the same impression on anyone who possesses a certain level of understanding. Gurdjieff cited the Great Sphinx of Egypt and ancient statues found in Central Asia as prime examples of objective art, containing complex cosmological systems meant to be read like books through developed conscious emotions. To actively demonstrate these objective principles, Gurdjieff conceived a complex theatrical revue titled The Struggle of the Magicians, basically a play. This performance featured sacred dances he had witnessed in ancient Eastern temples, where the movements of the dancers visually reproduced the cosmic laws governing the heavenly bodies. Operating like a massive living mechanism, these dances were designed to transmit precise, objective knowledge to those equipped to understand them. Beyond its artistic merit, the performance served as a profound, practical exercise in self-study for Gurdjieff's pupils. The performers were required to alternate between beautiful, harmonious movements as pupils of a white magician and ugly, discordant movements as pupils of a black magician. By forcing them to embody these opposing extremes, Gurdjieff ensured that the dancers would confront and study all the hidden, contradictory sides of their own mechanical nature. Expanding his teachings far beyond human psychology, Gurdjieff explained that organic life on Earth is constantly acted upon by intersecting, powerful influences from the sun, the stars, the planets, and the moon. Large-scale human events, such as the catastrophic outbreak of war, are not the result of diplomatic failures, but are directly caused by planetary tensions and accidental cosmic combinations. When planets approach each other and create tension, millions of human machines on Earth begin to slaughter one another, entirely unaware that they are mere pawns in a cosmic game. Within this startling framework, the moon is not viewed as a dead chunk of rock, but as a growing, developing entity that literally feeds on the organic life of the Earth. Gurdjieff taught that the intelligence of the sun is divine, and while the Earth has the potential to eventually reach that exact same level of intelligence, it is not guaranteed. The Earth has a definite time period to achieve its evolutionary goal, and if it fails, it may perish completely. When questioning why esoteric knowledge is so carefully hidden from the public, Gurdjieff offered a striking mathematical explanation. Knowledge is actually a material substance. Because it is material, it is governed by the laws of physics, meaning there is only a very definite, limited quantity of it available in a given place at a given time. It cannot be infinitely generated or universally distributed without severe consequences. If this finite amount of knowledge were distributed equally among millions of people, each person would receive such a microscopic fraction that it would change absolutely nothing in their lives. To produce real, transformative results and foster true intelligence, this material must be concentrated within a small, highly dedicated group rather than dispersed to the masses. Therefore, keeping knowledge hidden is not an act of injustice, but a necessary mechanism for its very survival and efficiency. Gurdjieff pointed out that the vast majority of humanity simply does not desire real knowledge. They actively reject their allotted share, preferring to live in comfortable illusions. This rejection peaks during periods of mass madness, wars, and geological cataclysms. When the masses irretrievably lose their reason and turn into automatons bent on wholesale destruction. Now, during these dark periods, the instinct for self-preservation vanishes, and centuries of culture are blindly dismantled. Because the crowd rejects the truth, vast quantities of esoteric knowledge are left unclaimed and scattered. Dedicated seekers who gather this rejected knowledge are not depriving others of their rightful share. They are simply rescuing what the masses have willingly discarded as useless. In doing so, these esoteric schools preserve the vital seeds of human potential, acting as an arc during an inevitable cyclical falls of human civilization. According to ancient teachings integrated by Gurdjieff, a fully developed human being is not a single entity, but is actually composed of 4 distinct bodies that interpenetrate one another. These are often referred to as the physical, astral, mental, and causal bodies, or in Christian terminology, the carnal, natural, spiritual, and divine bodies. Each successive body is composed of finer substances and grants the individual higher degrees of true consciousness and independent will. Most spiritual systems, however, forget a crucial, uncompromising detail. Ordinary man is not born with these finer bodies. They do not exist naturally as a human birthright. Rather, they must be artificially cultivated and grown within the physical organism through intense, grueling inner work, provided the correct internal and external conditions are strictly met. Now, the body-level Eastern term and the Christian term, theosophical terms, are listed as follows. The first, which is the carriage, right, your body, the carnal, physical. Second, the horse, your feelings, the natural, astral. Third, the driver, your mind, the spiritual and mental. And the fourth, the master, the I, the will, and the divine, basically the causality of the divine. As described in the previous slide, the first body, the physical body or the carriage, is entirely reactive, driven solely by external influences and mechanical processes. A person can live an entirely normal, intellectually stimulating life, possessing only this physical body, all while falsely believing they possess an immortal soul or higher consciousness. In this state, the automaton is in charge, and desires and thoughts are just accidental byproducts of external shocks. The second body, often called the astral body or the horse, corresponds to feelings and desires, and is considered a great luxury that very few people ever attain. It is formed only through terrible inner struggle and friction. When properly formed, this astral body can act independently of the physical form, withstand the physical death of the organism, and even undergo what people commonly refer to as reincarnation. Beyond the astral lies the third body, the mental body or the driver, which corresponds to true independent thought and intelligence. The consciousness that manifests in this third body holds complete power and control over the physical and astral bodies. Furthermore, a person who successfully crystallizes this third body possesses the possibility of acquiring profound knowledge that is completely inaccessible to the lower 2 forms. The absolute pinnacle of human development is the fourth body, the causal or divine body, representing the true master. The consciousness manifested in this fourth body has full control over the first 3 bodies and itself. This is the body that bears the causes of its actions entirely within itself, is completely independent of external mechanical causes, and is the true immortal vessel of objective human will. To cultivate these higher bodies and achieve inner unity, a person must undergo a severe process of internal crystallization, which can only be achieved through intense psychological friction. This vital friction is generated by the deliberate conscious struggle between the yes and no within a man's own minds, feelings, and desires. Without this constant internal warfare, no spiritual fusion is mathematically possible. If a person simply follows the path of least resistance, going wherever the wind blows and living without any inner opposition, they will permanently remain exactly as they are, a mere machine. It is only by establishing basically a definite line of struggle against one's own mechanical habits that permanent, unchangeable traits can begin to form, allowing the individual to slowly crystallize into a unified, conscious being. Gurdjieff issued a grave and terrifying warning regarding this process of crystallization. It can occur on both right and wrong foundations. For example, a ruthless brigand standing perfectly still in the heat for 8 hours, or a fanatical monk beating his head against the floor in fear of the devil, can both generate enormous inner strength. Through this extreme friction, they can crystallize and literally become immortal beings, preserving a certain amount of consciousness. However, because this crystallization happened on a wrong, incomplete, or fanatical foundation, these individuals lose all possibility for any further spiritual development. To correct this catastrophic metaphysical error and continue evolving, the resulting immortal entity must be melted down again. This melting process is incredibly difficult and can only be accomplished through terrible, excruciating suffering. When Ouspensky's group asked how one can privately evoke this vital struggle between yes and no, Gurdjieff's answer was uncompromising. Sacrifice is absolute necessary. If nothing is sacrificed, absolutely nothing is obtained. A seeker must be willing to sacrifice something highly precious at the present moment, and they must sustain that heavy sacrifice over a very long period of time to generate the necessary friction. Yet, Gurdjieff claimed that this intense period of privation is not meant to last forever. Sacrifice is strictly required only while the process of inner crystallization is actively taking place. Once a permanent I is successfully formed and crystallization is achieved, renunciations and sacrifices are no longer necessary. The individual becomes a law unto themselves and may have everything they truly desire. Gurdjieff's esoteric framework, while strictly his own, shares profound philosophical and practical resonance with traditional Islam and the mystical dimensions of Sufism. During his extensive travels in search of the miraculous, Gurdjieff explicitly mentioned studying within Sufi schools in Persia, Bukhara, and eastern Turkestan, which undeniably shaped his understanding of inner development. The fourth way's foundational assertion that ordinary humanity lives in a state of walking sleep directly mirrors the Sufi concept of ghafla, or heedlessness, a spiritual trance that blinds the soul to divine reality. Furthermore, Gurdjieff's rigorous methodology for combating the mechanical false I aligns seamlessly with the Islamic struggle against the nafs, the lower egoic self. Both systems emphasize that the ultimate realization of unity requires a continuous internal friction, a holy war within the self. As the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said that the greatest jihad is against your own vices and evils. Both traditions firmly maintain that this level of spiritual liberation cannot be achieved in isolation. It strictly requires the guidance of a living master and the collective energy of a dedicated group to succeed. Returning to the mechanics of this liberation, Gurdjieff frequently used the metaphor of a prison to describe the human condition. He stressed that if a sensible man wishes to escape, his very first requirement is the stark, undeniable realization that he is, in fact, locked in a prison. As long as a man falsely believes he's already free, he has absolutely no chance of ever escaping his mechanical nature. Furthermore, one prisoner cannot possibly tunnel under the walls alone. Escape requires a highly organized group of people working in turn to cover one another. Most importantly, they must receive instructions, files, and tools from those who have already successfully escaped the prison. This perfectly illustrates why a single man can do nothing on his own, and why a dedicated group with a real, knowledgeable leader is the absolute beginning of everything. So we're all walking each other home, and we need that. And the culture here in the West, the individualism and the loneliness and depression that people are going through, that's not natural and not normal. And that is the reason, what we're dealing with here. It's like, with my personal vocation, one of the clients that I was dealing with was an elderly man from India, right? He was lonely, and there was like no social system here, right? Because no one here deals with one another. And he was close to death. I was able to get all of his medical treatment done in terms of his cataract surgeries and helping him get his passport and visa so he could be strong enough to get back to India. Once he got back to India, it's like he came back to life. He remarried. His beard got turned from gray to black, right? He got healthier. His social system, right? Because there's like so many people that say hello to you, friends in the market, friends in the neighborhood, and he basically came back to life. So we need each other. And this loneliness and depression and individualism here in the West, this is the cause of why people are just going crazy here. In closing, the journey outlined in Search of the Miraculous is not a passive receipt of mystical comforts, but a demanding call to unrelenting inner labor. It requires us to completely strip away the comforting illusions we hold about our own consciousness, our independent will, and our individuality, forcing us to realize our own absolute nothingness as the only true starting point for growth. By engaging in ruthless self-observation, intentional struggle against our automated habits, and the conscious friction of yes and no, the seeker slowly opens the door to genuine being. It is a daunting, mathematically precise path to the miraculous, promising nothing less than the total transformation of the sleeping human machine into an immortal unified consciousness. Thank you for joining me on this profound exploration of the work of Gurdjieff, especially told through the eyes of his student P.D. Ouspensky in his book In Search of the Miraculous. Academic references, I recommend this book, In Search of the Miraculous, and also if you look up Gurdjieff's book, especially anything on the Fourth Way, and also other works that are out there. If you just search for Gurdjieff on Amazon or P.D. Ouspensky on Amazon, you will find plenty of books and information that are out there. Thank you for watching. If any questions or comments, please email me at salmanshaykh911@gmail.com. And of course, this video presentation and all my videos on my channel are protected under the copyright laws of fair use for the purpose of nonprofit, education, entertainment, free speech, and activism purposes. Thank you so much. All rights reserved.